Sorry, just testing. Let's start with the claim format. So you know that in your literary analysis claim, you must talk about a device and an effect. And of course, you must get author and title and so on. That's great. Those two parts you can do very well. It's pretty easy. But the device and the effect are still causing you folks some problems. You're still having some difficulty in narrowing down what your effect is or narrowing down what your device is. You're not specific enough. You're not writing books. Some of your claims, your topic sentences, could lead to books. Some of them could lead to long essays. Southview and Permian have many similarities and differences. Oh my gosh. That's so general, I would expect to see 10 pages out of that. Because you could squeeze 10 pages out of that. But if I'm asking for a paragraph, I want something tightly focused on one specific point, one paragraph. Have many similarities and differences is way too broad for a short paper, especially a paragraph-length paper. So let's talk about this again, specifically related to this. What is your effect for these rhetorical analyses? I just said it earlier. What's your effect? Thank you, Cousin A. But not enough. Not specific enough. If I say Bissinger uses this device to develop pathos, why is that vague? You need to tell which emotion is being developed. So in pathos, I expect to see an emotion. In fact, in your claim, I don't necessarily expect to see the word pathos, but I expect to see an emotion. If you say Bissinger uses device X to shock and horrify the reader, I don't need the word pathos. The word pathos and the concept behind it is implied with the shock and horrify. And besides, those are better, more specific verbs than pathos is. Pathos is a general category. Don't invoke a general category. Talk about a specific point, one paragraph, one point. What about logos? What's the specificity there?
Specific evidence, or like specific pieces of evidence.
Evidence would be the support. Evidence would be the device. That would be how he'd be doing it. But I'm looking for the goal. So you got the other half of it. The conclusion. What statement is Bissinger attempting to prove? Bissinger wants to prove that the oil industry is the cause of all of Odessa's cultural and economic woes. All right. I think he did a really good job of proving that through a lot of the evidence, statistics, personal testimony, authoritative testimony that he provided. Ethos?
What use of wordage or structure did the author use to make you feel more for the author or of the author?
You're really close to it, Gretchen. First of all, you were talking about device, use of language, but then you were getting to what ethos is. Let's see if we can get some clarity on ethos. It could help credibility, true. Omar?
How the author wants you to feel about him or her.
That's right, the identity of the author, which lends to credibility and connects us to the author. But ethos is about identity of author. Who is the author? What are the author's values? Is the author credible or incredible? So, Bissinger's use of X, whatever the device is, makes him more credible in the reader's eyes. I don't need to use the word ethos. So when you're writing these claims, make sure that you are making them specific. This is the #1 area where I am removing points from your writing right now. And I was just grading the Ask a Coach writings. It's #1 for that one too. Getting really vague topic and claim sentences. So you want to specify it there. All right? Now, want to fill in this side. What are the devices? Now this list will be much longer. And over the course of class today, I want to generate sort of a list of devices that you can choose from. So think about what we did with those selections, those 6 selections. What sort of devices? What were the techniques or strategies? Omar.
Vocabulary.
Yeah, specific. And I'm going to use a word that's kind of the same thing, Omar, but a little bit more specific. Diction. That means word choice. The words that I choose, and I choose them intelligently because I am a writer and I know that language has power, so I specifically choose words. What other devices?
Structure.
Explain.
As in when we went over the paragraph in black and white,
Uh-huh.
you said that Messenger made one whole paragraph the N-word.
That's interesting. To do what, Gretchen?
To display how the word itself can take up an entire paragraph. That's how important it is to that sound. They're not important. But
Right. Gretchen, I was thinking of the structure issue that you mentioned, the size of paragraphs, as being really linked to this diction idea. In other words, making that word its own paragraph really draws attention to the word. But yeah, you've got something that might be slightly separate. Good. Good. Type of diction, use of slang. What else? Buller, the dog.
Emotion.
That's the effect. Characters are not chosen, they're created. No, that's sorry, that's an important difference, actually. People believe, especially when you're talking about a non-fiction book, oh, these characters are all real. Bissinger had no control over that. Absolutely false. That is not true. Guys, now I'm going to use you because you're next to me. This is a person. The dead words on paper are character. There's a difference. And when you translate one to the other, there's a loss in translation. Character is a construction, a fabrication from human minds, always, even when it's based on a real person. You know something about Derek Evans from Carter High School. You don't know all of him. You don't know the entirety of the person that is him. You have a very, very microscopic view of this young man. That's it. And a view that probably leads you to be disgusted by him. I can't stand that guy. But I realize that all I have is the little bits of information that Bissinger has led me. So characterization is absolutely a technique. Buller the dog in that selection is characterized as lovable, moral, imperfect, to create sympathy. So characterization could be used to develop certain emotion, sympathetic reaction, or antipathy, which is the opposite of sympathy. It's where you reject a person. What else? Yeah, absolutely. Anybody in that Scarlet Letter group remember a specific type of evidence that was included in there that might deserve its attention all on its own?
wasn't she saying, or was saying that the main character was taken to court or something?
True, so that's evidence from the book. That's correct. In the last sentence, though, there was evidence from somewhere else. Nobody recalls? Yeah. That's true, but and that's right before the last sentence page, so you're really close to it. In the last sentence, do you remember? Correct, another author who says, yes, this other author who wrote this book on the Scarlet Letter agrees with me. So there's all sorts of different types of evidence. You could have evidence of authority. In other words, an expert in the field believes this. You could have evidence that is statistics. What would be more powerful? A single instance of a city council meeting in Odessa where the M-word is used, or the relative frequency expressed in numerical form in which the M-word is used in city council meetings? Which is more powerful evidence? The frequency expressed in numerical form, or telling me a story of one instance? Why is that? Oh, that's true. But let's say let's say I give you a number, John, and it's something like out of let's see, in 72% of city council meetings over Odessa's history of the past 20 years, the M word has been used without without feedback, without comment. Or I tell you one story. What's the relative advantage and disadvantage of those two types of evidence? Good. Yes, so the story has more of an emotional appeal, right? Which means that the story works there. Where's the statistical evidence work better? Absolutely. Because numbers are more authoritative than subjective experience. So you see how I can tell a story in different ways, provide different sorts of evidence, because I want different sorts of effects. Any other devices that you can think of?
Like the tone?
Tone is usually created, though, by word choice. So you're correct, Nora. Tone is really important. Tone is the attitude that an author presents, but tone is often created by word choice. All right. Well, you've hit a number of them, and I have a number of others on a list that I'm about to give you with some discussion in connection to Friday Night Lights that you haven't gotten so far. So let's take a look at what we